Ollie, and today I'm going to be doing lesson 6, in which we first introduce functions. In this case, we'll be creating a simple program that takes two inputs from the user and multiplies them and displays the product. So I'll be using three different functions aside from main, and yeah, so let's get started. So these are the tabs that I have open to start. Let's go ahead and create a new file. Place it in lesson 6. And we'll get started by including the IO stream. Since we are taking input, we're displaying output. So we have to include that so we can use those objects. Using namespace std. This also houses a lot of things that we'll be using throughout our program. So this just makes it easier so that we don't have to continuously type std in front of everything. So those are the only three things that we first have to include before we get into the meat of it. So now I will introduce my parameters, and this just makes it so the compiler knows what to expect before the main function. So it's like declaring a variable before you use it, but in this case, functions. So these are the functions that I'll be using again, and I'll just list them in order of which they'll appear in my code. So first is calculation. And I'm using a double because, as you can see in the sample output, we have decimals. So it's not just an integer or whole number, but can also take more precise numbers. So I want it to output a precise number and for the user to input numbers with decimals as well. So we'll call one double x, and the next one we'll call y. The next one that I want to introduce is user input. And I chose to do void here because we're not returning anything. We're just taking input from the user. So again, they are going to be using double x and double y. But in this case, I want to pass by reference instead of by value. So I'll put the little and symbol in front of both x and y. And I do this because I want the value to actually change and not to just not to just retrieve a copy of it, but the actual value of it. Okay, and the next one is printout. So do a void for that one as well because I don't want it to return anything. It's just going to be used to print that out. So void print out, and this will also be double x, double y, and then we're going to introduce one more double, which is going to be the result. Okay, and that is enough of the parameters. Next, we can go ahead and start with our main, and here we're going to declare the variables that we'll be using. So we're going to be using That's the first number, the second number that they'll input, and then we want to call the function that we'll be using. And these are the variables that will correspond with what the parameters are in our function. So double reference of x, reference of y. So that'll be number 1 and number 2. And then the result is going to be the calculation function, in which it will multiply the two values entered. And what it's going to take, again, in terms of this program itself, number 1 and number 2. What am I missing? Oh, yeah. And then this is our last function. So it's also going to be using, again, in terms of this program, those variables are going to be called number 1, number 2, and we'll keep result. And we want it to end from there. So return 0. All right, and now we can get into the meat of things. So now I'm going to define my functions. So type my header here, and we can also just reference what we put in our prototypes. So we'll type it just as we see it up there. So void user input double and x double and y. And this is where we put what the function will actually perform. So for this particular function, again, we're taking the user input. So we want to see out, and this is where we will prompt our user. So enter first number, put a space in between so it looks nice, and then cin the value of x. So that will be stored in number 1. Okay, next. Cout, enter second number. And then we want to store that as y, or in this case, number 2. And that ends that function. Okay, so after we receive our input, we then want to calculate it. So double calculation, and it's going to be taking double x and double y. Then we want to tell our program what it's going to do. So in this case, we do want it to return a value, and that will be the product of x and y. We don't want it to print out just yet. We just want it to do that calculation. So then we can go on to our next function in which we will print it out. So we'll now define our printout function. So again, this will take x, y, and it's also going to take the result of the calculation here. So double result. What we want this function to do is just print out something. In this case, we're going to do x times y equals, and then result. Okay, and now we have everything we need for the main program to run. So the compiler will read from top to bottom, and we'll see that IOStream is included, so cout, cin can be used. We don't have to include std and everything, that's covered. It knows to expect the calculation function that will produce a double, the user input function that will doesn't return anything, but the parameters of that are reference of x and y, and then the print out function, which takes x, y, and another double. That's going to be the result. So let's see how it runs. Go to save first. What do we have here? A type specifier is required for all declarations. 8. Yes. So we have to make sure that we declare that the main function is returning an int, which in this case will be nothing. We don't want it to return an actual integer. And now let's give it a run. Enter first number, 2.5. Second number, let's call it 3. Okay, perfect. So 2.5 times 3 equals 7.5. And let's try it again. Let's try just whole numbers. All right. All right, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great night. Bye-bye.